Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, as you know, we'll give you sports information from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is @ Indus News Sports. That basically works both for Twitter and for Instagram. But anyways, go to the headlines first. And yes, from the world of PSL, the final Peshawar Zalmi versus Multan Sultan at the Sheikh Zayed Cricket Stadium in Abu Dhabi today. And yes, talking about the test match, New Zealand managed to win against India on the maiden test championship in England. And yes, talking about Euro 2020, Portugal drew against France 2-2, while Germany survived a major scare while playing against Hungary and the draw 2-2. And yes, from the world of NBA, we talk about Milwaukee Bucks losing against Atlanta Hawks 116-113 in Game 1. And yes, from the world of golf, Graham McDowell and Martin Kaymer named as European vice captains for Ryder Cup 2021. And yes, those were the headlines. And not to forget, today is finally the big day. Yes, we're talking about the finals, Multan Sultan and Peshawar Zalmi. Let's see who is ready and how exactly will this entire match flow, because there are too many speculations over the internet. People are talking about how, some are saying that Zalmi would definitely take it. Some are saying Multan Sultans. But I think both the teams have actually come up to that point of proving themselves as a solid team. To discuss the in-depth analysis from the world of PSL, we have with us Mustafa Naqvi joining in all the way from US. Mustafa, thank you for joining in.
Thank you so much for having me, Alamdar. It's a pleasure to be back.
Great. So Mustafa, we'll start off discussing the final to begin with, because today is the big day. It's going to be super interesting to see how things develop. And there are a lot of predictions out there, but let's talk about your take on, firstly, Multan Sultan followed up by Peshawar Zalmi.
So it's a crunch game. I think the two best teams have made it to the final. The two form teams. It's definitely going to be a cracking match. I think, in my opinion, Peshawar has a slight upper hand. Hazratullah Zazai has been in sizzling form since he's come in the tournament. Their fast bowlers are coming off. Right. They've been fielding well. But then again, Multan has also been playing well. Their batting has really come together this season. And I think the two best teams are ready to play what should be a really good final.
So if they have Zazai, let's talk about Shahnawaz Dahani as well, because I think the leading wicket taker for PSL with 20 wickets in hand, I think it is surely going to be super interesting. But I remember this one match in fact in which Zazai got caught instantaneously on the first ball. So it can go either ways, because if you look back into Islamabad United's performance, the run out that actually took Usman Khwaja down, it eventually took the entire team down. So it's a very tricky match, in my opinion, as well.
I agree, and I think that matchup that you mentioned, Shahnawaz Dhani against Zazai, that's probably going to be the match of the final, like the matchup of the final. They're both in super hot form. Dhani's been bowling exceptionally well. He's been bowling fast, accurate, taking wickets, and Zazai's been just smashing them all over the place. So it really, it's setting up to be a really thrilling encounter.
Right. And in terms of talking about favorites, most of the people are obviously inclined towards Zalmi, because not to forget that, this is the fourth time that they're in the finals. And in terms of Multan Sultan, they've qualified for the final for the very first time. So we never know what the odds truly are.
Agreed. It's T20. On any given day, any team can win. It just takes one spectacular performance. And Zalmi has been, probably one of the best teams in PSL since inception. They've been consistently either making the finals or making the playoffs. And Multan, it's their first time in the final, but they're coming in red hot form. Right. And it should be a fantastic matchup. I'm really excited.
Yeah, if we talk about the playoffs, I would want to go back to, obviously, let's have a quick word on how Islamabad United managed to lose against Peshawar Zalmi, and then we'll also talk about the eliminator one match, which was, in fact, we should start off with that match in particular, where Karachi Kings in the last over missed two catches against Peshawar Zalmi, and I think that was the time or the moment that they realized that because at the very start of the tournament, I think Karachi Kings and Lahore Qalandars were doing super fine.
Agreed. Yeah, I think both teams, Karachi and Lahore, were off to really good starts, and then somewhere along the middle, and they just lost a bit of momentum. And coming back to that qualifier game, Karachi against Peshawar, I think, like you mentioned, the fielding in the last over was terrible. I think they dropped 2 catches
Right.
when they only needed at the 6 or 7 runs. And T20 fielding is so important because every run matters.
Right.
And like they say, catches win matches. And if you're not going to hold catches, especially in the last over, you're not going to win tournaments.
I absolutely agree, and I think that was probably the moment. And I remember watching Wasim Akram sitting and getting really upset on the misfieldings by Karachi Kings. And I think this has pretty much continued in the PSL, specifically on the fixture when they went all the way to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, agreed. And it's the conditions in UAE might have been a little tough for the players. It's really hot, really humid every night.
Right.
A lot of these players might not have been used to those conditions, but you can't make excuses. At the top level, they're playing professional cricket. Some of those catches and misfieldings were a bit embarrassing. And as we saw by Wasim Akram's reactions, I think throughout the tournament, he was also getting quite frustrated, especially towards the end.
Right. And talking about, obviously, I'm going to talk about the second playoff, which was Islamabad United versus Peshawar Zalmi. I think at the very start, when the run-out happened of Usman Khwaja, I think everything changed for them. However, if you remember Islamabad United, Hassan Ali scoring 45 runs in 16 balls. I think because otherwise I did not see any strong, solid number on the scorecard.
Yeah, agreed. Losing Usman Khwaja early was a big loss. He's their form batsman. He made 100 and then he made a 70 in the game after that. So that was a big loss early up.
Right.
And none of their batsmen fired. They all got in. I think Munro got some runs. But the rest of the middle order all got, 10, 15 got out. And then Hassan Ali at the end really gave them a fighting score. I think it was 174 that they were defending. But I don't think they had prepared for the Zazai factor.
Yeah.
Because once he got going, it was just
right.
a
And
one-way
honestly,
show.
honestly, talking about Zazai, you're absolutely right. I think he's one of the biggest phenomena that has actually happened to Peshawar Zalmi lately.
Agreed. He's really been a revelation. He's done this on the international level and some other leagues, but this is really like 3 innings. Scoring, good runs at a very fast rate. No team has figured out where to bowl to him yet.
Right.
I think in the last eliminator, they started off bowling well to him. They kept him pretty quiet for his first 20, 25 balls. But then once he got a few off the middle, it was just a one-way show from there.
Absolutely.
They were just cruising after that.
Looking back into Zazai when he made his international cricket debut back in December 2016. But in February 2019, not to forget that he scored the highest run ever for an Afghan batsman. That was an unbeaten 162 runs off 62 balls against Ireland.
Yeah, I've heard of that innings, and I didn't get to see it, but I've seen the scorecard and I've read about that innings, and just the statistics, 160 something off 60 balls. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it shows you what kind of power and range he has once he gets going.
Right. And talking about power and ranges, I would also want to talk about, I still remember how Islamabad United managed to break the score record of PSL by scoring 247. I think that was one of the most impressive, shows put up by them. And I think it's all inbuilt, because Islamabad United, when they were playing the fixture back in Pakistan, they were not really up to the mark. Rest of the teams pretty much were, but I think they started to gain momentum. But I think it was pretty much on the hard luck side for them not to be there out for the finals.
Agreed. I think that match, especially, they batted superbly to get that massive total. And towards the end, they just lost a bit of momentum in their campaign. I feel like they started well. They were doing really well in the middle. They lost some crucial moments in their last couple of games, which they ended up losing the game because of. And that's cricket, just an off chance here or there, and then all of a sudden you lose momentum and you lose the game. And in T20, you can't, in a tournament format, you can't have that many losses.
Right. And talking about, so let's just have a quick take on Multan Sultan and Peshawar. Obviously, as you mentioned, it's going to be Shahnawaz Dahani versus Zazai. So what are your current predictions for the final, just to have an overview for, maybe by the time we do a show tomorrow, we'll probably have a better idea who won.
It's a really tough call, but I'm going to have to back Zalmi on this one. I think they're all departments of the game. They're firing, they're confident, they're gelling really well. The squad, the camaraderie in the team, you can just see it. You don't see that in the other teams. So if I had to pick a favorite, it'd have to be Zalmi for this one.
Well, I'm sure it would be a super interesting match, and not to forget that this is 2021. There are too many upsets that really happen, and most of the favorites since 2020 there have been major upsets. But let's see. I think even if Multan Sultan managed to win, I'm sure that would be a super amazing thing for them, because this would be the first time, as mentioned before, that it's the first final ever faced in PSL.
Absolutely, it would be a huge moment for them and a huge moment for the franchise, being one of the newer teams in PSL, not having reached the final before. Right. So the stage is set for them to make a big upset.
Right. Looking forward for that. Mustafa, I would also want to jump up to a quick take on the other test that went off, and New Zealand finally managed to win against India. What's your take on that maiden test? And obviously, too many fingers pinpointed, but I think it was a very interesting match, and I think the conditions were truly very hard. So what's your take? How did you see that overall match developing for the betterment of the Black Caps?
So I think it was a fantastic game of cricket to start with. They lost, I believe it was a day and a half due to rain. And to still have a result, even though they lost all that time due to rain, it was a fantastic game. I think New Zealand had a bit of an advantage. They had already played 2 tests versus England in England before this. So they already had a little bit of form. They already knew their combination, whereas India was coming in, not having played test cricket for a while, having no warm-up games. And you could tell that there was a little bit of rust. Right. And to be honest, the better team won. I think New Zealand thoroughly outplayed them. Yes, the conditions were very difficult for batting, especially early on. But you still have to get runs on the board. And I think especially their bowlers, the Black Caps bowlers, were phenomenal.
Yeah, if we talk about Jamieson, I think Jamieson is one of their supermans, to be very honest, in terms of his performance. I think he has outshined the entire prospect of India thinking to win.
Agreed. And on the last day, on day 6 of the game, which was the last day, I think he got the new ball ahead of Trent Bolt, who is their senior seamer. So that was a big statement, and he bowled a fantastic spell. Took 8 wickets in the match, I think, got man of the match. He's had a phenomenal start to his test career, and hopefully only gets better from here. It's really a privilege to watch.
Right. And a quick word, because there were too many question marks, too many questions from Kohli right now. There's a lot of debate on his captaincy.
I think it's a bit rough. You can't judge him off just this one game. Right. He led India to a series win in Australia not that long ago, not once but twice. Right. Back-to-back series wins in Australia is almost unheard of. So I think the criticism on him is a bit harsh. Right. But you get that with subcontinent teams. Our fans are so passionate that even if you lose one game, you're going to have to hear it from the media and the fans.
Well, absolutely, Mustafa. Well, anyways, thank you so much for being a part of the show and discussing the world of cricket with us. Looking forward for this amazing final. Thank you.
Thank you, Alamdar. Thank you.
So that was in-depth analysis with regards to the PSL. Yes, Multan Sultans are facing Peshawar Zalmi. Looking forward for that match. Not only that, we also talked about how India lost against New Zealand. Anyways, guys, we'll take a quick break. Once we get back from the break, there is more news coming up your way from the world of sports. See you guys after the break. And yes, welcome back from the break. And yes, before the break, we were discussing the world of PSL and the world of cricket in terms of the test series. Not only that, we'll definitely give you more information about sports. I'm going to talk about the world of football. Yes, I'm talking about Euro Cup 2020. That has finally developed and started happening because of the fact it was developed back in 60 years ago. It's been a while that it's been out now, and there are super interesting matches that are coming in. And as I discussed in the headlines, we've talked about Portugal dreaming against France. But to discuss the in-depth analysis, we have with us Andy Jones. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Great. So, Andy, we'll start off with the first match to discuss. Obviously, we talk about Portugal, their match against France 2-2 to begin with in the Euro Cup 2020.
Yeah, certainly. So this was the final stages of the group involving France, Portugal, Germany and Hungary. And having expected France, Germany and Portugal all to coast through very, very easily, actually Hungary were a bit of an upstart and were causing mayhem in the group right up until the final moments of that final game. We'll talk about the Germany-Hungary game in a moment, but as you say, we'll start with France and Portugal. Portugal took the lead with a penalty early on. France then equalised through a penalty of their own. Portugal then had another penalty, which put them 2-1 in front before Benzema made it 2-2. Right. What I'll say about this game, there were three very controversial penalties. The first one was awarded for a foul on the a foul by the goalkeeper Lloris, the French goalkeeper Lloris, on a Portugal defender who got to the ball first. These fouls aren't normally given, actually. Goalkeepers are normally given carte blanche to do almost whatever they want when a ball comes in. The goalkeeper, Lloris, dived towards the ball to punch the ball clear, but he hit Danilo square in the face, almost like a boxer's knockout blow, and the referee awarded a penalty. Cristiano Ronaldo, who's the top scorer in the competition and on the precipice of being the top scorer in world football, the most international goals of any international player, going ahead of Iran's Ali Daei. He's now level on scores. He rolled the ball in to make it 1-0. France then were given a really soft penalty, Mbappe colliding with a Portuguese defender, Nelson Semedo in the box. Not many of the pundits, not many of the fans at home believed it was a foul, but Benzema, after quite a delay, then rolled the ball in to make it 1-1. And that was the score at half-time. And France then promptly went up straight up the field, just into the second half, and scored another controversial goal. Benzema was initially flagged offside, but with the new video referee technology, they then made it. The referee then overruled that decision to put France in front, and then Portugal, through another handball goal, another handball award, were given a penalty, which Ronaldo then scored to make himself top scorer in the competition with 5 goals, which is not bad for a 36-year-old.
Right, and interestingly, if you look at this, I think one of the toughest group was this Group F in terms of performances. But we can now switch over to obviously talking about Germany and Hungary. I think it was surely another interesting match because in terms of Germany's performance, obviously we always think that, you know, when they're going to come, they're going to take over. Even with regards to France, the last game that they had. So I think it's a very introspective development with regards to how we're seeing this group develop. And, you know, as you said, that the final stages, so obviously, but even then Hungary gave Germany a tough time.
Yeah, Hungary gave Germany a real scare. And in fact, they got a draw out of France in the previous game and gave France a real scare. One of the features of this European Championships has actually been that all of the games are played in different cities. Normally you have one host country or one host city. Right. And so Hungary have been able to play a lot of their games in Hungary, which has been a big advantage to them. They were roared on by vociferous home support. They took the lead against Germany. Zalmi with the goal there. And Germany didn't really look like offering an awful lot. And it wasn't actually until the Hungarian goalkeeper made a bit of a mistake. He came and flapped it across, the ball squirting up in the air, and Kai Havertz bundling the ball over the line. Immediately, in very un-German-like fashion, Germany then immediately gave the advantage away. Hungary went straight up the field, and Schaefer scored. He got onto a long ball, beat the goalkeeper to the ball, and headed it into the net. And again, Germany didn't really look like scoring. It's been quite a peculiar performance by Germany. Going into this tournament, they lost 6-0 to Spain before the tournament started. Right. They lost fairly convincing. It was 1-0 in the end to France in their first game against France, but it was quite a convincing win for France, who had 2 goals narrowly disallowed. And Germany really looked to have looked completely out of ideas until Leon Goretzka scored very, very late on. After a bit of a scramble, he hammered home a finish from the edge of the box. One of the bigger teams really hit top gear. There's been, speaking from England, even though we've gone through with 7 points and haven't conceded a goal, there's been a lot of criticism of England performances. There's been criticisms of France performances. They obviously drew with Hungary. Spain failed to win their group as well. Sweden winning their group. Spain failing to beat Poland or Sweden in their group. And one of the main features has been that very few of the so-called big teams have performed. Only Belgium and Italy and Holland or the Netherlands have gone through with 9 points.
Right.
Netherlands possibly having quite an easy group. Northern Macedonia were in their group, and they were able to run up a lot of goals. But only really Italy and Belgium can be described as convincing so far.
Right. In terms of performance, you're absolutely right. And I think this Euro 2020 will surely, obviously, as it's developing further, it comes to the playoffs, I think the team that actually would manage to eventually get to the semis or even the finals and maybe get the cup will surely have a bigger edge in terms of the World Cup that's lined up for 2022.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some fabulous knockout. We've reached the round 16 now, which means obviously 16 teams, 8 knockout games. Some of the games of the round will be Belgium versus Portugal. That sees Cristiano Ronaldo against Romelu Lukaku and players like Kevin De Bruyne as well. Belgium obviously getting to the last semi-finals of the World Cup, and Portugal being the current holders, having beaten France in this tournament.
Even if we talk about Portugal, I think they've always struggled. Even if we look back into the World Cup side, I think it has always been a very tough journey for them in terms of their performance.
Yeah, it is. Portugal have yet to reach a World Cup final in modern history, but they are the current holders of this European Championships. They beat France in extra time, the last competition that happened in Europe 5 years ago. The difficulty with Portugal is they rely so heavily on Cristiano Ronaldo, and Ronaldo, although he's a fabulous player, he's 36 now, and if you're talking about the competition beyond this, the World Cup, there'll be slight doubt whether or not he'll play there. Or what his influence will be. This is very much considered, in Europe anyway, as Belgium's moment. Belgium have had a fabulous squad of Hazard, Romelu Lukaku, Kevin De Bruyne, and other similar players. And this is seen as, previously there were younger players. This is very much considered their coming-of-age tournament. They reached the semi-finals last time, of the World Cup last time, which was considered a good achievement. They finished third in the World Cup, but this is considered very much their moment. And there'll be questions of manager Roberto Martinez, I think, if they don't get at least to the semis and the final here.
Right. Well, Andy, thank you so very much for being a part of the show and discussing Euro 2020 with us. So yes, that was Andy. He put his in-depth analysis with regards to how things are growing. And yes, with regards to Portugal, they have been struggling for a while, and having Cristiano Ronaldo obviously struggling for a while. But now Cristiano Ronaldo is surely one of the leading goal scorers in the international football. Anyways, this was news on the Euro Cup. I'll quickly jump over to the world of NBA. Yes, talking about the world of NBA, an interesting match, a very interesting match, talking about Atlanta Hawks beating Milwaukee Bucks. I think my personal favorites have been Milwaukee Bucks, but unfortunately they managed to lose. The score was 116 to 113. But there's a big difference in home and away game, because when you're playing on home, obviously it makes it more easier for you. But anyways, this was the first game that Atlanta Hawks managed to win, and obviously this is the game one in terms of conference semifinals. Obviously after this they'll head on to the final side. Trae Young actually finished with 48 points, and not only that, Young, he also added 11 assists and 7 rebounds. So I think it's an interesting work from them. John Collins added 23 points and 15 rebounds for the Hawks. So surely and gradually, as the NBA playoffs come further, we'll surely be telling you guys how things are going. And not to forget, Giannis actually managed to score 34 points and 12 rebounds for the Bucks. So I still would think that Bucks will eventually manage to make where they have to go. But anyways, this was from the world of NBA. I'll quickly jump over to the world of golf. Yes, talking about golf, we're talking about Ryder Cup 2021 McDowell's, and Kamer named as European vice captains for the Ryder Cup 2021. And McDowell's claimed the winning at Celtic Manor back in 2010, and he was also a vice captain under Peshawar for Europe victory back in 2018. And this year, the Ryder Cup is scheduled for September 24th to 26th. So guys, we'll surely be updating you in terms of what's truly happening in the world of golf. Meanwhile, you guys can surely reach out to us on our social handle, which is @Indus News Sports. That works both for Twitter and for Instagram. Anyways, take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.